Great. I'm just going to kick off the session. Hopefully everyone can see this Google Slides presentation. But welcome everyone. This is our second project show and tell. Thanks for making the time to attend this session. I'm Chris and I'm the delivery manager on this project. And what we'll be using this time today to focus on is Hackney's contact tracing service and how we're developing the Here to Help tool to support contact tracers in their work. Before we get started, just want to say that show and tells are one of the regular methods we use to keep everyone updated on project progress. And really importantly, it's also about your contribution and participation in the session. So if you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to ask them or let us know. It's all part of the process of how we can improve our project work as we go on. For this project, we've got a core team of colleagues from a number of services with a really wide range of expertise. So we have colleagues from adult social care, City and Hackney's public health, customer services, IT, and also colleagues from MateTech. And we're all working together to meet our project vision, which is to develop the Here to Help tool as a single database and user interface to support 4 key strands of the Council's coronavirus response. And this tool should enable call handlers to have the best possible conversations with residents affected by the pandemic and make it easy to link residents with the support they need. And so the 4 services that we're helping through this work are here, and they're all part of the Council's response to supporting residents throughout the pandemic. Before we get into the specifics of the contact tracing service, we just wanted to talk through some of our team updates from this recent sprint. So the first one, which you might have seen from the first slide, is that we've had a name change. Previously, the tool that we were developing was called I Need Help, and our project was called Coronavirus Call Handling. We've now changed it to Here to Help for both, and we think this better reflects the approach that customer services are applying in the services they're delivering to residents, and also how one of the core elements of this project will be developing reusable components for other services. So we really want to make sure that this name reflects that what we'll be developing will also be applicable for other services to enable them to have good quality conversations when they come into contact with residents. Some other updates we have around how we've worked in new ways. So from our retro so far, we've really talked about focusing on working collaboratively. So getting the best out of the team's different skill sets and making sure that we're all inputting to our work to improve our team's productivity and efficiency. And we're also thinking about getting greater input from customer services. And we've really valued the input of call handlers so far. And it helps us when we're planning our work, make sure that our information is accurate and also what we're doing is really relevant to meet their needs. One of the other really important sessions that we had over the last 2 weeks was a knowledge sharing session with Camden about one of their similar call handling tools that they've been using to support residents during the pandemic. This was a really great opportunity to learn about some of the opportunities and difficulties they had with their work, and we saw a lot of things that we can learn from, and also some similarities that that we've been struggling at and dealing with as well. So one of the opportunities that came out of that session was how Camden had created this tool, which throughout the pandemic had meant that multiple council services could work through one product, and how beneficial it was for meeting residents' needs. And that's one of the really key things that we're thinking about for our Here to Help tool as well. So bringing together different council services to contact residents through this product. And then one of the challenges that came out of that session was also around how burdensome it can be to manually upload cases each day to these tools. And we're seeing that with our work in Hackney as well, and we're thinking more carefully around how we can create our data processing routes more efficiently. So it's really great to have those sessions and learn from what other councils are doing. And it's great that on this call today, I think we've also got colleagues from Ealing and City of London as well. Finally, what I just want to say around working in a new way over the last sprint was that we've had a real shift away from our initial focus, which was developing the tool to support clinically extremely vulnerable residents. And over the last 2 weeks, we've shifted to really focusing in on the contact tracing strand and supporting tracers, which was a shift which made sense, particularly as shielding ended last Wednesday in London. To talk a bit more around Hackney's contact tracing service, we've now got Andrew and Maite who are going to talk about their experience of doing contact tracing. So I'm just going to hand over to Andrew now, who's hopefully on the line.
Yes, I am. So I got here just in the nick of time. Thanks very much, Chris. Yeah, just to provide a little bit of background, I just think having a look at the audience who we have here today, I think people have different levels of insight to the contact tracing system. So just going back to the very beginning, the National Test and Trace System is the ones responsible for monitoring the results of the COVID testing, and then calling the people who've tested positive to try and identify where they've been, who their close contacts have been, who may have been exposed, and then passing that on to another team to follow up with those exposed individuals and asking them to self-isolate. So that service had teething problems, well publicised in the national news, and they were only getting through to around sort of 2/3 of people. So we have kind of a third of people walking around without any information or follow-up. And that's where the local contact tracing systems have tried to fill the gap. They've been coming online throughout the year. We were one of the earlier London boroughs to get started. We started in mid-September. We have our team running 7 days a week. It's a combined service between the City of London and Hackney. In the City of London, we rely on our environmental health officers to get the information and do the adequate follow-ups. Obviously, a professional service who do very similar work routinely. They're highly autonomous and are able, with the relatively low number of cases for the City of London, they're able to operate quite independently. And most of the conversations that we have tend to be around the technicalities or difficulties around particular cases. In Hackney, the volume of calls we've had to deal with is significantly higher, and our customer service team have done the training to provide the service. So initially we had 4 managers and 6 individuals doing the training, coming on board. Maite was one of them. And they dealt with an absolute tidal wave of cases early on, compensating for some flaws in the national system, and also just the number of cases that we had to manage, the background level of COVID. So that team's become quite expert now. Subsequently, the numbers have receded quite a lot and have stabilized, but they're still high, still sometimes sort of 20 to 30 cases, which is a lot. Our team worked under a huge amount of pressure for a long time before we got a couple of full-time people on board who are now quite well established. And our original group of trained contact tracers are covering the out-of-hours service, and that, I hear, is a lot more sustainable for everyone. Everything has been done on, so if you could move to the next slide, please, Chris. Everything was done on cobbled together spreadsheets and Word documents to begin with, similar to people working in other boroughs. Very difficult to manage, lots of things to juggle, and easy for errors to creep in. Nevertheless, the team coped with that very well. However, it did feel like we were sending people into battle unarmed, just having to make do with pitchforks and potlets, as I've said before. So this project is really an opportunity to equip them with tools that they need to deliver this extremely important service more effectively. They're already doing well in terms of the success rates. I think we're getting up to about nearly half of cases that come through to us now, which, bearing in mind that these are automatically the most difficult complex cases, that's pretty impressive. And overall, combined with the national system, we're reaching about 90% of cases now, just shy of that. And we've got some plans to implement some other approaches, which will hopefully boost that even further. So I think that's probably all I have to say in terms of the background and overview. Our frontliners, Maite, I think, is here to give a much better insight into what is actually happening on the front line. But it can't be said enough that our team has done a fantastic job so far in very suboptimal circumstances. And the development of this new system represents an opportunity to massively improve a really important element of the work that they're doing, and just taking their attention away from dealing with silly administrative nonsense and allowing them to focus on actually getting rid of this virus. Thanks very much, Chris.
Thanks, Andrew. Maite, are you happy to come in?
Yeah. Hi, Tom. My name is Maite. I'm part of the new build team as a senior customer rep, but I've volunteered to work on the test and trace line since September. So I'm just going to basically talk you through like a normal shift. So at the beginning, I started to do shift between 9 to 8. So what would happen is that we will work on previous cases that are open. So say if we were today, we'll start closing down the cases from yesterday. So just to try to close them. Then around 10:30, 11, the managers will send out a text to the new cases. So we'll probably be allocated around 6 to 7 cases per advisor, depending on the cases, how many cases there is on the day. And we start basically making calls around 11, 11:30. So on all cases, we have to make 10 attempts. So once I have my cases allocated, I will go to I guess like a portal or log into CTAS, where the NHS test and trace form is, and basically what we need to do with this form is to get as much information about the person that's been positive, COVID-19 positive, and get as much information with their contacts, the symptoms that they had. We need to basically kind of like really motivate them to give us as much information so we can obviously complete the form and make sure that we have covered where they've been 2 days prior to when they had the symptoms, and then after we have to look at 5 days before they had the symptoms. So that's what we have to do. Once that form is completed, we have to basically release it. So complete it on CTAS, go back to our Google form. So there's probably about 5 to 7 tabs that we have to open, because there's a script that we have to basically follow when you're doing the form. So sometimes it can get quite tricky, but there is important information that we have to follow through the script and make sure that we take the information from the caller. So we will basically, once that's finished, we'll complete the form on CTAS, go back to our Google Sheet to basically complete it and write any information that's important for the managers here to look into. During the call as well, we do advise them about what Hackney has to offer, if they need like support, whether it's for welfare, or if they need basically food, or if they need like maybe some people, deal with anxiety. So we will also do some signposting and refer them to our C19 helpline. So overall, that's what we do on the daily basis. So working on the line, I would say that sometimes we can have cases that it would take 15 minutes to basically complete, because people are very informative. They know what they did. They don't have to really look into thinking back, when this happened or who was I in contact with. But sometimes it can take up to an hour to actually complete a form if basically a lot of contacts, or if they've been to a particular shop, then a restaurant. So we have to make sure that we obviously cover all of their contacts and all of their moves. So sometimes it can take a bit longer. Most of the people are quite open to give information and willing to give information, but some are a bit hesitant because they feel like they're giving away too much information. They don't want the government to know what they're doing, and they feel like we basically kind of like controlling what they're doing, and they're not really willing to give anybody their contact or the people they've been in contact with. But that's only few. Most of them are quite okay, and we have good conversation around what they've been up to. Thank you. So for me, I will talk about the positive of being in the test on the test and trace line. The reason why I volunteered is because I feel like it's a small part that I can take into, I guess, helping the community and get into, resolving this C19 issue. And I just felt like it was really positive to get into it. And even you have here with the contacts is more, for me, is more than just you're taking down the contacts and thereabouts, but you sometimes to reassure them, just to have a conversation, just to give them a bit more information about the COVID-19, and you really do get a positive feedback here from the resident, which is like really lovely, helping the NHS doing the test and trace. So I'm really proud and happy to help with this project. However, there is frustration as a call advisor. One that I do struggle with, that there are too many tabs, unfortunately. We have Google Forms, we have CTAS, we have 3 different e-learning where we keep all the information to help us have the knowledge of what we need to tell the cases. And I think that is quite a lot, especially basically jumping in and out for the script, because there is part of the script that is really essential to read, and there's some that you can just, I guess, freestyle and comfortable just to relay. So that's one of the frustration. Sometimes when you do get to the call the contact and they do pick up, they state that basically they're being called already. So before they actually, as advisors in Hackney, we call them, they might have already been called by other agencies 10 or 20 times, we don't know. So when they come to us, they're kind of already frustrated because they spoke to someone already and they're not really willing to engage. So it does seem a bit messy on that part, and it's a bit of frustration because you don't really know what to do. Another thing is the fact that sometimes we have cases that are families, so there will be 5 of them, and we still need to basically, so sometimes I will have 3 cases, separate cases, but they're in the same household. So I will still need you to complete each form with each cases. And sometimes the family is just like, they don't have the time. They will be like, take the information that I give you and apply it to all the contacts or all my family members. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Each member of the family in the same household needs to complete their own form. So that's one. And the last one, for me personally, being on the test and trace line is for me to actually complete the form. So when I call somebody, because you have to call them up to 10 times before you close the case, they do not answer. So for me, I feel like I'm kind of failing and I did not really complete my job, although it's not in my control. But for me, it's a personal frustration because I feel like the more form that we complete, the more information, obviously, the NHS will, and the more data they will have you to track and trace the C19. But overall, I'm happy with helping. It's been a great experience, and I'm still on board for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maite. That was a really excellent overview of the service, and thanks for going into the really important work that you're doing. Just going to hand over to Claudia now, who's going to talk around some of the improvements we've been working on with the Here to Help tool to support the tracing service.
Thanks, Grace. So I'm going to talk through some of the things we've been doing to try and get the contact tracing calls into Here to Help. So Maite spoke through the process of what she goes through, and what this shows is that process. So from the beginning, so before she starts making the calls, the managers will download the list, and then through to the end where she's updating the call sheet. What you've got on the top here are screenshots of the different tabs that people will have open and programs people use at each point. And at the bottom, it's a list of the actual programs they're using. So I just wanted to use this to pick out a couple of key points. So firstly, on the left, the Google Sheets, basically the MVP that was set up incredibly quickly. And as Andrew was saying, this allowed Hackney City to be one of the first boroughs to be doing contact tracing calls in London. What it's also allowed us to do is see exactly what we need to do to build into Here to Help, and what data we need to be able to put in and to download and take out as well. On the right hand side, where you've got that stack of images, these are the different tabs and screens that people have open during one single call. So as Maite was saying, it's about 7 or 8 different tabs, and that includes the scripts, it includes CTAS, it includes the call handling software, and this is what Maite was saying, she has to sort of navigate and jump across. Thanks, Chris. Can you go to the next slide? So in terms of the areas of opportunity, so we've been working really, really closely with Maite and her team and the call managers as well to understand where the key points are for them so that we can build this tool to support them. And one area is around the complex data cleaning process at the beginning of each day. So this includes removing duplicates, it includes separating the City of London and the Hackney data, and also includes putting the data into format that's actually usable for the call handlers to take forward. Secondly is around data security risks. So because we're using Google Sheets, there's always an element of risk and also manual error. And thirdly, around being able to access the CTAS data. So once it's submitted, there's no way of going back to look at it or to pull it. And that also feeds into the problem Maite was talking about of not being able to pull data across from one family member to another if they're in the same household, for example. Next slide. So for call handlers, for Maite's team, so some of the greatest areas of opportunity were around reducing the number of tabs and pages that are needed during a single call. Also, the fact that CTAS itself is just difficult to use. So the national system often crashes. You can't save it and go back, as I said. So that's something that we want to look at to see if we obviously can't change the system itself, but we might be able to change the processes around it. And thirdly, people feel like they're focusing on form filling rather than public health. And one person we spoke to said that it makes me feel bad at my job and I feel unprofessional because I have to jump around between so many pages and CTAS is so difficult to use. So what we've done so far in the last 2 weeks, firstly, we've built a way into Here to Help to actually log and manage calls. So on the top left, you've got the current contact tracing call log in the Google Sheet. So this sort of allowed us to understand exactly what elements we need to be tracking. Underneath that, you've got a case note history in the current Here to Help tool, or the one before we made the update, which shows how calls are currently logged. So that's just manually. And then on the right, this is the new system that we've just introduced. So this is also going to support the other call types as well. So those are shielding calls, the CEV calls, welfare calls, and help request calls, so that we have a more systematic way of logging and reporting what calls are being made. So we've got a demo now. This is of the recent updates we've made. I can just talk through it. So we've now got contact tracing is visible now in the call type list. And then as you go through, you can see the current call status. You can log a call. You'd be able to see if someone has already made 9 calls and this is the final one in case you need to close the case again. And then when you save it, it logs it as one of those green tabs at the bottom. So making it easier to see rather than that long sort of stream of text. We're actually updating this in response to some of the call advisors team's feedback at the moment. So we've been working really closely with them to make sure it's as helpful as possible. Next slide, please. So one of the other areas Maite was talking about the scripts. So what our public health team did was condense a huge amount of information from Public Health England and put it into a format that the team can actually use and make it helpful for them. What we want to do next, so that's what you can see on the left. What you want to do next is put that into a way that's easy to navigate, because there's a lot of sort of logic. So if someone says yes to something, you have to move to something else. So we're testing that. We're going to test that in Google Forms, and then hopefully have that as something that's going to be built into the tool itself. I think there's some questions around what other councils are doing with CTAS questions. So we're also looking at eventually going to be building in the CTAS questions alongside the scripts into the tool. But that's not quite yet. That's something we're looking into at the moment. Thanks, Chris. So we had a sort of list of things we wanted to get done for today, and most of them are live. So, for example, being able to show the day's call list in Here to Help, and also being able to mark call attempts and outcomes. One thing that's delayed is around highlighting multiple cases per household. So I think Maite mentioned what's frustrating is if you have 3 people from one household and they might be at different points in the call list. And we want to be able to group them or find a way of doing them together to reduce the time taken and also the frustration for the families or the people who are being called. We get very, very limited data from PHE, especially around addresses. We might not get the first line of address at all. So we're just working out a way to be able to group these at the moment. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks a lot, Claudia. In terms of next steps with our work, one of the things that we really want to focus in on is testing this new functionality, which we have on Here to Help with officers using live data. We're also looking at work around delivering a more efficient process for uploading new tracing records to the tool each day. And this will include processing the data so that we can identify City of London cases and share those cases with their tracing teams, so their environmental officers. We also will be beginning some development work on changing the front end to Here to Help. So that's as a response to, at the start of last sprint, we identified some issues with the existing front end, and we're making quite significant changes to it, which we will update on at our next show and tell. We're also looking at a couple of pieces of research as well. So researching how we can embed the CTAS questions into Here to Help, as Claudia mentioned. And then in addition to that, we're also looking at how we can research improving the uptake of contact tracing. So that's that completion rate as part of wider behavioural insights work that we're doing with public health as well. That brings us to the end of our slide deck. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
Hey, I've got a question, if you don't mind me just jumping in with it. Just a quick one on the new instance of CTAS that we're expecting to see that people have mentioned in the chat. Is the idea that maybe in the long run there'll be an integration between Here to Help and that new CTAS system, as we're all hoping it has an API and actually works properly this time?
I can step in with what little I know about that, unless someone else has insights for what PHE are doing. But originally they said in September that they're planning the new CTAS rollout in November, to which I just sort of nodded with a skeptical look on my face. And of course, I didn't imagine November. I haven't really heard much about it since then. I really don't think it's going to be possible to predict if and when this is going to come out and what functionality it's going to have. I think if they knew and had a clear roadmap, they would very likely share that with us. Could be wrong, but I don't think we can build it into our plans very easily. I think we have to develop something that is autonomous. And then if we do have any benefits from a really well-designed new version of CTAS, then we can roll with it. That would be my view.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've heard rumours that it's coming in January, but as you say, those rumours have been floating around for some time. So I got another question as well, if you don't mind. Sure. Is there any thought or looking towards mass testing and approaches to mass testing that the Here to Help system might kind of feed into?
Shall I field that one again? So the answer is we have not planned this for it. That wasn't on our roadmap. to incorporate testing on this. NHS Test and Trace, you can think of it in terms of the testing element and the tracing element, and this is just the tracing that we're focused on here. I don't think it would. I don't think it would yield much benefit if we did put any resource into that. When you say mass testing, we've got the regular PCR testing, which is what's been going on, the one that goes to the lab and takes a day or so, and then we've got the lateral flow tests, which are sort of the 20-minute tests, which are being rolled out gradually in very specific settings. In terms of logistics, we're thinking carefully about how we might improve contact tracing by maybe speaking to people at point of test, for example. But I think in terms of this project, that will probably, it shouldn't have too much impact. I think it's just the contact tracing for now.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks a lot for those questions, Jay. Does anyone else have other questions at this point? Conscious we're also slightly overrunning. If there aren't any at this point, I'm happy to wrap up the session. I'd just say if anyone's got any questions outside of this session, please get in contact with us either on Slack or on email, and we're happy to have further discussions about any questions or comments that you might have on this piece of work. And if there aren't any questions at this stage, just like to say thank you so much everyone for attending, and hope to see you at our next one as well.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks, really good work on all this.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.